So, really, this is just a test run because I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So, let's just get right into it. Um, yeah, that is me arting. So, I'm just doing a really quick pen sketch in my notebook where I always draw really just quick sketches, usually just warm ups or little comics of ideas that I just want to get down or that are just stuck in my head that I need to get out that might not ever see fruition, that might just stay in the notebook and never be seen by human eyes other than mine. So, yeah. But this is just a really quick doodle of Quiz Girl. I started too low on the page. I was having a lot of difficulty seeing what I was doing because I usually hold the notepad up at an angle. I never draw with it facing, just sitting level on a table. That is extremely difficult for me to see what I'm doing and properly project what's in my mind onto the paper and to figure out exactly where I want to place everything. I kind of, at one point, situated myself differently, and I was afraid that if I did originally, that I'd end up on the camera or I'd, um, overlap somewhere here and obscure the paper. But that didn't happen, so I was able to look at it a little bit better at one point. So basically, everything I'm doing here is just like a general pose that I've drawn 100 times, which is why it's easy enough for me to do just typical anatomical placement. Very simple. Nothing too fancy. I don't know why I just autofocused. I don't know what it decided, why I decided to do that, but it did. Um, there's really no rhyme or reason why I draw like this. I go back and I see something that I'm not quite particularly fond of or I think needs emphasis, and I go back and I add it in while leaving random parts incomplete. A lot of this was figuring out how I moved the paper and how it would appear on camera when I moved it. And if it would turn out completely horrendous or if it would turn out okay. And yeah, I think that leg wasn't coming out exactly how I wanted it, and so I just went in there with the pen and emphasized what features I wanted to be read immediately rather than my errors. And that's just kind of a cheap little trick to get the audience, the viewer, to look at what you want them to look at and kind of ignore it. So you want to draw any thinner, sketchier line and then emphasize what you feel is correct with a darker, thicker line when you're sketching. When you're sketching and you're not going to erase anything, like if you've done it in pen and you feel like you screwed up at some point. So yeah, there's just more of that is happening, and then adding in some other random details. And so here's that post-it note thing that all the cool people do that I'm not really, I'm not exactly accustomed to doing it, but I'm trying it because I see everybody else doing it and it seems like a pretty neat thing. And so I decided here that her head was too big, which, given the way I started the drawing and I wasn't really angling it and I didn't have a good perspective on it to see what I was doing and how I just started off with that. without any forethought. So I decided I'd use this little post-it note method to go in and correct the too large of head. And the post-it note method works really well, and I'm sure like most people are aware of it and use it already. But if you don't, a post-it note is pretty transparent, close enough in transparency to a piece of tracing paper. And so you can see your original lines. You can kind of use those as a base to draw a cleaner sketch over it. And so you can use that to correct it, or you could just use that to take something that's really scribbly and refine it and just read your correct lines through the scribbles and emphasize those while ignoring the excessive line work that's on it. So I'm looking at, I probably should have done that for the leg too, but I was lazy. And there you have